Good morning, 8A1 and 8B4. This is Miss Lawson, bringing you your next instalment of your work. Actually, it's not just a new week. It is, in fact, a new scheme of work. It's a new topic. It's a new book that we're going to be focusing on. So this lesson is going to be split into two. The very first half is going to be looking at your task, which was last week, and then the second half is going to be introducing your task for this coming week and your new book. So let's get cracking. First, I'll just recap for a second. You all had the task of hot seating Mother, essentially, and doing 3 questions that you would like to ask her, and then writing a letter from her perspective to Father, asking whether they could go back to Berlin. Some of you did the choice of, you wanted to take Father with you, and all of them leave with the maid, and some just said, that they wanted to take the children away with just Mother, and that was absolutely fine for either. And I have been, like I said, I've been absolutely blown away by how much hard work and effort you guys have put into these. There were some tears forming, which, it's not a first for Miss Lawson, is it? But it's rare, and especially when you're doing all of this at home, I'm just taken aback entirely. So I wanted to incorporate every single person's letter onto this PowerPoint. So the first half may well be a little longer. So we have some really lovely letters, like I said. I really like the fact that this person's clearly been on Wiki Fandom and found out Mother's name, which was Elsa. I really loved it. Some people actually did do the highlighting of their techniques. So we've got the rhetorical question here, for instance, the emotive language. I only asked you to incorporate 4. Some people managed to do more than 4, so really well done. This person here, I loved their use of the range of punctuation and the sentences and the repetition. It was really lovely. Some of these letters actually made me feel like I was part of an EastEnders plot. If you actually cared about me, you would know. I am furious. We've got some, like a lovely range of punctuation. And I do keep harping on about that, but that is just how you push your answer to another level. So this one here, for instance, I really loved it. Then come home, Bruno needs you, Gretel needs you, I need you. Dum dum dum. Loved it. Really good. And this one here clearly has got the rhetorical question. Fantastic. Have a look at this one. This one again was laid out really beautifully, and they've been ever so helpful, and they've listed their techniques they've used. So the emotive language, the similes, they've used similes and metaphors, rhetorical questions. Simile and metaphor not necessarily part of the device technique, but again really useful in terms of creative writing. So brilliant, really well done. Can't you see how hard this is for me? This is selfish. We should never have left Berlin. I really loved it. It was really good. I like this bit here. It's like we're living next door to hell, that we keep on smiling and acting like nothing is happening. People are being killed right on our doorstep. Blood, sweat and tears are being shed for no good reason. This is monstrous. I really loved the emotive language on that. That was absolutely fantastic. Let's have a look at this one. We've got the rule of 3 here, which was really brilliantly done. Cruel, horrible and mean. Again, laid out beautifully, perfectly with the right letter format. Rhetorical question. It's really lovely. And, we deserve better. So I hope you consider our letters. It's vital that our children are safe. Really imploring Father to reconsider his position. Really well done. This one again, really well done. We've got use of rhetorical question. We've got it's just quite simple, but I really did like it, and you managed to incorporate the devices and you highlighted them for me, so really well done. Let's have a look at this one. This was one that really did blow me away. So much effort's been put into this. I'm so grateful for all of you that have done this. So we've got some emotive language, which is sick with guilt. We've got the rule of 3, curious, inquisitive and interested. Emotive language, lonely and isolated. Rhetorical question, do you really want Gretel and Bruno growing up in a place like Auschwitz? Would you promise would be further away? How would you be so utterly merciless, cruel and heartless? Got the lovely rule of 3, and actually further on this person's used the rule of 3 but with the alliteration as well, so she's combined both miserable, melancholy and mournful absolutely fantastic. We've got the repetition of the word heartless here, which links back to over here again. So it's all, almost not quite a cyclical structure, but it is a repetition. It goes round. And I like this bit at the end that says, "This is your assignment, not ours. It is going to be us or Auschwitz?" Question mark. Lovely use of range of punctuation as well. Really, really lovely. Absolutely. That's why they've got the yellow star, and they've even put a little signature on the end, which I was very touched. Let's have a look at this one. This person didn't actually do the letter per se, but they did do the extension task, which was very interesting. Now, if you remember rightly, I asked for you to do the letter. That was definitely a must, but the extension task was an optional extra should you fancy pushing yourself. And I was quite interested. I received probably 3 or 4 extension tasks, and I was quite interested that no one really picked up on the power angle, the fact actually that the question, sorry, let's just retract for a second. The question in the extension task was, how are mother and father similar? Because obviously they have opposing views in this instance. One wants to go back to Berlin and doesn't believe in what the Nazis are doing, and one does. Massive difference there. But actually similarities, if you think about it for a second. Mother is under the control of her husband. Remember we talked about gender, we looked at the gender roles of the time of the early 1940s, and actually mother had no say or little say. She was being controlled. And actually if you think about it, father is too. He's being controlled by the Nazis. And so that was one similarity. This person here has picked up on the fact that they are both stubborn and they get annoyed. They do clearly both love their children, and I don't think necessarily that's a lie. They just show it in different ways. Father's very headstrong, but actually mother's very headstrong, isn't she? Because she's managed to get her own way, which wasn't typical of the early 1940s. So I really loved that. Well done. Let's have a look at this one. Let's make this one slightly smaller first. And let's look at this one slightly bigger. This person's clearly understood that they both live at the same address, which I find quite interesting. Not many people have done that. I really, really liked this one because it's using the persuasive techniques, very similar to what we've learned in class about using facts and opinions to convince someone. So they've talked about socially isolated children with significant risk of poor adult health compared with non-isolated children. So true, and you know what? So apt for right now, isn't it? They also may have low childhood social status, low childhood IQ, and maybe overweight. This person has clearly done their homework. So yeah, I loved it, and you can clearly see this person put attention to detail because they've called mother Frau Elsa, which is true. It's the German word for Mrs. if you don't study German. So yeah, brilliant. I really, really, really liked it. Again, it's like another EastEnders plot. This place is not suitable for children. I wish you the best of luck at Auschwitz. I loved it. And it's slightly passive aggressive, isn't it? The important role you have. We've talked about being passive aggressive and how mother was passive aggressive throughout the book, actually, as a way of forming her control and gaining control, and actually just a bit of an outlet. The fact that she couldn't have her own say. This one here, it's we have nice short punchy sentences again. We have emotive language. It's really, really good. But we've also got a link in the context of the actual book. The fact that she says, and we won't have to drink the medicinal sherries. It would be like normal. Because remember, mother is drinking too much and having these afternoon naps. So that was really, really well done. Fantastic. Let's have a look at this person's here. Goodness, the amount of effort that's gone into this. This one here, full of emotive language, great use of exclamation marks. I mean, sometimes exclamation marks can be quite tricky to use within creative writing work because it becomes a little bit throwaway if you use too many, but this person has used it correctly. So she said, my mental health has been decreasing rapidly. All my medicinal sherries and afternoon naps is an awful way to live. So again, we got the link to the actual book. And all I want is my happiness back, exclamation mark, which has been wrongly stolen from me by some people. So again, we've got that link to the actual book where mother often said some people by referring to that as a father, because it's a passive aggressive way of being confrontational but without necessarily being confrontational. I really, really liked it. And again, short punchy sentences, work or family. It's really, really well done. The only thing I would say and a couple of you have done this, and mentioned the word kids. Kids tend to speak colloquial language. It's kind of slang, and they wouldn't have perhaps used it in the 1940s, but absolutely really loved that letter. Okay, this one here is an interesting one, because this person has taken the mindset that mother has of the Jewish people, and that's not really touched upon necessarily throughout the book. Now, we know father has this take on the Jews because that's his job. We don't really get that sense from mother necessarily, but this person has written that she does have a similar view of the Jewish people, which would have been true. Okay, remember we talked about propaganda. We would have been the whole generation of Germans, unless you were Jewish, of course, would have had the mentality that Jewish people were less than. It was, xenophobia, racism was being rife throughout the community, throughout society at the time, because of how clever the Nazis were in terms of indoctrinating and spreading propaganda. So here we have some really kind of gut-punching language, really, next to filthy concentration camp with even filthier rats inside. And I don't think this person means the animals. First, if I'd ever stepped out of your study, you would see how unhappy your son is. He's constantly dismal and bitter about his loss of his friends, as shown by his longing gaze outside of the window. So that's a lovely, again, little nod to the book, because remember the window, where he was looking through the window. Even Führer had aforementioned, a healthier child yields a more fit soldier for the fatherland. I mean, this is absolutely spectacular. You want Bruno to become Hitler's secretary, don't you? It's always been your dream and aspiration. The dirty non-humans that reside so close to us and our precious children may even affect them. I just thought this was absolutely fantastic, so really well done. That actually does deserve a star. So I'm going to put one here, just because I can. Right, let's have a look at this one. Again, this was really good, and this is another one who's done an extension task, so really well done. We have got someone who's highlighted them in red for me. So many to mention. I would be here all day if I listed them all. We have got the word stress, miserable wife, the rest of your life. We've got short, punchy sentences, rhetorical questions. It was really, really fantastic. I really, really like this one. Really well done. This person here, there's two here. This one on the right actually can be a bit hard to read sometimes. I really did like this one. It took me a while. If I put it on the PowerPoint, I can't actually show it very well on this video, but it was really well done, and actually this is some of the best writing I've seen from this person. And this person here has really made my life much easier, and they've highlighted it for me. You can see the 3 questions for mother and the starter, so really well done in accessing their lessons. Unfortunately, your mother has died. I think your father needs some support, don't you think? Right, firstly, it's a rhetorical question, but secondly, how apt is that? That's really well done, because actually, yes, when a grandparent tends to pass away, remember grandmother did die in the book, didn't she? That left grandfather at home by himself, and that would be another reason why typically now, even now, that you would perhaps move back to be near a family to support grandfather. And I thought that was quite interesting. That person managed to pick up on that. So really well done. Everyone who has submitted their letter will be getting an R2, and if you did an extension task, you'll be getting an additional R1. So really well done. Now, if you're watching this video and you haven't sent me anything, don't panic. It's okay. I will make sure that I still read it and I still mark it, and I'll still give you feedback. So everyone who has sent me work, I have sent you feedback. It's on Teams. If you go onto the assignment, and I've returned feedback for you. Right, so let's move on. Let's have a look at this new topic. Now, this is going to take us up to the end of the term, Arthurian Legend and the Lady of Shalott, and I'm going to explain to you roughly now what the task is. It's not going to be a great deal about the Lady of Shalott in this week's lesson, but I'm going to discuss about the Arthurian legend. Interesting. We're talking about King Arthur. I'll be completely honest, guys. I don't know if I've been living in a cave. I'm not too proud to admit it, but I didn't actually know a great deal about King Arthur. It's probably slipped me and passed me by. So when I've been preparing these lessons over the last couple of weeks, I've been making sure I'm reading up, and that actually is one of the tasks, is to read up and find out more. But let's just go through some really important terminology And so what we're going to need as we go through the forthcoming weeks. Now, there's a key vocabulary word bank, and I'm really keen on doing this with you, and to build up this new vocabulary word bank, just as you would have done in Year 7. We haven't done it obviously since lockdown, so let's just start now. There's a 10-minute do now task. I know it's funny because it's 15 minutes into this lesson, but it is starting off. So pen and paper. I would like you to go away and find a short definition and synonym for these words and write them down. Unreliable, variance, credence, interpretations, engendered. Okay, they are really crucial. You should know probably 2 or 3 of them minimum. You might know all of them, but just write down a short definition for me and keep it safe in your books. We're going to add to it, getting more more of an analysis of, instead of analysis of just the book that we're going to be reading, and there is a book, but we're going to be looking at analysis of the myth and the legend of King Arthur itself. And these are really important words. So take 10 minutes and go away and do them. Okay, so Arthur, myth masquerading as history. Okay, so the general idea of Arthur was presented as a victorious 5th century warrior leading Britons against invading Saxons. So 5th century, it's a long time ago. However, the credence of the story is impossible for historians to confirm. So even if you would speak to your history teacher, they wouldn't be able to confirm it. It's likely that there was someone similar. And as you go through this week's task, you'll probably find more and more information. There's no concrete archaeological evidence, however, but then that might just be because it was such a long time ago, who knows. Written references first appear long after his time, and over the course of time, the story has been added to and adapted. I clearly can't spell, can I? So it's been changed depending on who the audience is, essentially, which is really crucial when you're thinking about it. If you have a look at these 3 pictures, we can see progression just by 3 simple pictures. You know, we've got a very old, I think it might be a Renaissance painting, but it's extremely old. And then we've even got Disney, who's done a version of it, and we have Hollywood, who's also produced a version of Arthur with the Arthurian legend. So things we do know: Geoffrey of Monmouth, born between 1090 and 1100, was a British cleric and one of the major figures in the development of British historiography and the popularity of tales of King Arthur. Now, Geoffrey claimed his work was based on a secret lost Celtic manuscript that only he was able to examine. And in this work, for the first time, Arthur's whole life is told, from his birth to Tintagel to his eventual betrayal and death. Guinevere and Merlin appear, and so does the legendary sword Caliban, later known as Excalibur, and even the king's final resting place at Avalon. The story has evolved over the last 800 years, and even now it's adapted to suit the audience, which is crucial. Now, the actual original adaptation happened because it was written in the language. Someone came along and wanted to translate it and put it into a more accessible language, and you're going to find all of this out for your task this week. What happens when you translate things? Things get lost. So we're not saying that King Arthur definitely didn't exist. He may well have, but it's been changed and adapted, which is why we're going to be exploring it. Now, the latest or the most up-to-date version, especially in the world of literature, is by a book by Michael Mythmasquerading. We've all heard of him, I'm sure. He has written a book, and I'm going to attach the attach the PDF, and we're going to read 1 chapter of it now together as a class, and then you're going to go away and read the 2nd chapter. And the book is called Arthur, High King of Britain. Then, once we've done that, I would like you to use these useful websites on the background of King Arthur and research the following and create a fact file. What do I mean by fact file? Well, it's going to be a minimum of an A4 piece of paper. I would like you to really give it the best that you can. I want you to ask these questions. Who was King Arthur? Who was Merlin? Who was, pronunciation is not my strong point, Uther Pendragon? What period or era were they living? And who was Geoffrey of Monmouth? And what is the legend of the Sword of the Stone? And like I say, I vaguely know the Sword of the Stone and the Round Table and the Knights, but actually how the story came to be is very interesting. So I'll be really interested to see what you come up with, and I am going to take time to read all of yours because well, quite frankly, I could do with learning from you as well, so we can learn together. Right, so let's take a time just to read, and maybe might not read the whole chapter, but let's just read a little bit together. So the PDF is split out here. It's I will send the link out to you. It shouldn't be too hard to follow along. The language isn't particularly strenuous, but it is a beautiful book. Obviously, it's Michael Mythmasquerading. So let's read a couple of pages together. The boy left home at first light, enough food and drink in his rucksack to last him the whole day. It was something he had always promised himself he would do. If ever he had the chance, if ever the circumstances were right, he told no one of his plans, because he knew his mother would worry. His little sister would tell on him, and his father would try to stop him. As far as they were concerned, he was going shrimping off Samson. He would be getting up early to catch the spring tide just as it fell, so that he could walk the seabed from Bryher to Tresco, and from Tresco over to Samson. That was what he'd told them. Everyone did that, but what no one had ever done, so far as he knew anyway, was to walk over to the Eastern Isles and back again. Everyone said that it could not be done in the time. His father was quite adamant about it. That was partly why the boy was determined to do it. He had worked it all out. He knew the waters around the Scilly Isles like the back of his hand. He had lived there all his 12 years. From the deck of his father's fishing boat he had learnt every rock, every sandbank. He knew the tides, the currents and the clouds. He could do it. The spring tide would be the lowest for years. The weather was settled and perfect, red sky the night before, and the wind was right. So long as he left the Eastern Isles by 12:30, he would have enough time to make it back to Bryher and home before the tide rose and cut him off. He knew precisely how fast the tides came in. He knew there would be places where he would have to wade shoulder high through the sea, and if the worst came to the worst, he could always swim for it. He was a strong swimmer, the best in his school. He could make it. He would make it. He stood on Green Bay, looking out across Tresco Channel, the cold mud oozing between his toes. He checked his watch. Just before 6, a pair of oyster catchers busied themselves in the shallows and were interrupted by a gang of raucous gulls fighting over a crab. They took off, piping their indignation. The sea was fast draining away in the Tresco Channel. It was a windless, cloudless dawn. The boy hitched up his rucksack and began to trot out towards Tresco. As he had expected, the sea was still running fast through the channel. He splashed out into it, the force of the current soon reducing him to a walk. He took up his rucksack, held it above his head, and waded in deeper. The cold of the water took his breath away. He thought that maybe he had set out too early, that he might have to turn back and wait for the tide to ebb a little further. But a few steps more, and he was through the deepest water, and then out of it altogether. He clambered up over the dunes and broke into a run, passing Tresco Church by 7:15. He was on time. As he came down to the harbour of Old Grimsby, the whole seabed was open to the sky. It was as if Moses had been there before him. The sea still ran through in places, but he could see his route plainly. Team, then over to St. Martin's and along the shore towards Higher Town Bay, and there was the Eastern Isles still surrounded by sea, Galilee Sandbar already a golden island in the early morning sun. The sandbar would be on his only way in and his only way out. In less than 2 hours, by his reckoning, the sandbar would be a brief causeway to the Eastern Isles. He would have to hurry. He ate his breakfast on the move, a couple of sausage rolls and a jam sandwich. He gulped it down too fast and had to stop to wash it down with water. Biting into the first of his apples, he headed out towards Team, and with the tide still going out, he knew that this was the easiest part. It would be on the way back that he would have to race the tide home to Bryher. The return must be timed perfectly, to the minute, so the sooner he reached the Eastern Isles the better. Once there, he would have to a quarter of an hour to eat his lunch and rest. With this in mind, and only this in mind, he reached St. Martin's and ran along the beach, trying to keep to the wet sand. It was easier on his aching legs than the softer sand near the dunes. The sun was high now and hot on his head. The rucksack was chafing at his shoulders, so he hooked his thumbs into the straps to relieve the soreness. When the beach became rocks, he turned inland and followed the track through the bracken towards Higher Town. He was passing the school gates when he saw Maurice Jenkins coming down the track towards him. He was about the last person the boy wanted to meet. Maurice would want to talk. He would want to talk. "What are you doing over here?" Maurice shouted. "See you, Maurice," said the boy as he ran by, breathless. "Flaming marathon, is it?" "Something like that." And then he was out of sight and heaving a sigh of relief. He slowed to walk. His legs felt heavy. He was tiring. He longed to sit down, to rest, but he dared not yet. He thought of Maurice Jenkins. He had resisted the temptation to tell him where he was going, what he was doing. He'd only have scoffed. When the time was right, when he had done it, then he would tell anyone. Then he'd tell everyone. There'd be those who wouldn't believe him, of course, Maurice amongst them, but he didn't mind that. He would know, and that was all that really mattered. He bit into another apple and pressed on towards the Eastern Isles. By noon the boy was sitting in triumph on the highest rock on Great Genelly, the largest of the Eastern Isles. There were a few other walkers out and about now, shrimping the seabed around St. Martin's, but he was quite alone on the Eastern Isles, except for a solitary seal bobbing in the open sea, and a few shrieking terns that were diving at him, trying to drive him off his rock. He sat where he was, ate his lunch and ignored them. In time they gave up and left him in peace. He finished his last jam sandwich and he checked his watch. He had 10 minutes to spare. He'd rest for a minute or two and then be on his way. Plenty of time. He lay back on the rock, head on his rucksack, his eyes squinting at the glare of the sun. He closed them and wondered how the Scilly Isles had been when they were one entire island, before it tipped 1,500 years ago and let the ocean flood in. Had there been an earthquake, or a tidal wave perhaps? No one knew. A mystery. He liked mysteries. He liked the unknown. Lulled by warm stillness and more exhausted than he knew, he slipped into sleep. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Now, like I said, if you've got any other questions, please don't hesitate to email me or come over to Teams. Read those first 2 chapters and then put together a fact file with those questions in mind, so that we can get the basic context of Arthur and who he was and how he came to be, and the myth, and was it a myth? Who knows? And I will come back to you this time next week with some more tasks. I hope you have a lovely week, and I will speak to you soon.